Hi everyone, welcome back. Another video today. I'm going to talk about my complete inbox NES collection. So, I've talked about it on the channel before, but for those that are new or unaware, I collect all my games complete in box. It's just how I prefer. I like having the original packaging, seeing what's on the back, flipping through the manual, stuff like that. And it's just kind of how I've collected for the last several years. But there was a time before I was doing that where I was a little less discerning, and not everything I owned did I collect complete in box. And the NES in particular was one of those systems. It was something that I had a lot of cards from my childhood collection and things like that, so I had never... loose was fine. But I, over the course of many years now, have been working on a kind of a personal project to get boxes and manuals for every NES game I have. And I have officially gotten at least the box for everything. I have most of the manuals, not all of them, but my NES collection is officially boxed up. And so I figured that's a perfect opportunity for us to look at everything I own on the NES, share some memories, and, talk it through, see what the system means to me. The NES is like halfway my first system. It's not really. It was the first system I played, and it was one of the systems that was in our house growing up, but it was my sister's system, who's several years older than me, and I never really contributed to choosing games. Even for holidays and stuff, I wouldn't get NES games because the NES was kind of her system. So I would play the stuff that she owned. But my first system, personally, was the Sega Genesis. So I do have a lot of, memories and, childhood associations with a lot of these games. But it's not the most nostalgic system for me. That said, there's a lot of good stuff to talk through. So let's just dive right in. First up here, immediately, a childhood favorite of mine, one of my faves. We've got Kiwi Craze. We've got apparently Jackie Shazam? I don't know. Jackie something's copy of Kiwi Craze. If you've never played this before, this is a Taito game. It is like a puzzle platformer. I mean, it's a platformer, but it's sort of in that weird design style where it's not always easy to know exactly where to go. Levels are large and maze-like. It's not actually the type of game that these days I would be super into, but I loved it as a kid. I still love it. It's got really good music, some fun set piece boss type things. Yeah, it just plays really well. Definitely one of the more underappreciated games on the NES for sure. And these are in no order. There's some of them are loosely in alphabetical order, but really no. Next up here we've got Bubble Bobble. This is, classic puzzle game. This is one that I actually haven't spent too much time with. I mean, from what I have played, I've enjoyed it. It's fun, but Bubble Bobble is not a game that I grew up with. I respect the characters like hell, and it is a cool series. It's just one that this is one of those games that I've done that poke at for 5 minutes here and there type thing. I've never seriously sat down and been it's Bubble Bobble Day. So maybe someday. Well, definitely someday. But yeah, still happy to have it. Next up here, we got a pretty fun shooter. We got Star Soldier. Maybe not the best Star Soldier game in the series, but if you're into scrolling shooters, it's still an enjoyable one. Plus, we have to respect the purple box. Look at that, just beautiful, that movie poster artwork right there. You're like, what is this, a Star Wars game? Next up, I actually really like this game. Solstice, if you've never played it before, is a room-based isometric puzzle platformer. So there you go. You walk in these sort of labyrinths, room to room to room, avoiding enemies, picking up items, keys, things like that. And it's just about figuring out where to go and how to navigate the individual rooms. The isometric movement is a little difficult to get used to, but once you sort of meet this game on its terms, it's quite good. Next up here we've got John Delano's copy of the original Castlevania, and he wanted you to know. So it's John Delano. It is John Delano. So obviously not in great condition, but I got this box for very, very cheap. Original Castlevania, what do you really need to say about it? It's a classic game, and both me and John are big fans. This is actually... Well, we'll talk about it. I'll say this is not my favorite Castlevania game. It's great, but it's just not my favorite in the series. Alright, next here we have Hide Lied, which is a RPG, one of the RPGs on the system that I think does not get very much love. This is one that I have not played yet, but it's very cheap. It's got a reputation for a little bit of jank, and it seems like something that I could probably find some fun with. So I picked this one up sort of intrigued, but without too much knowledge of how it actually plays. So that's one that I will probably be streaming in the future. We've got Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters. This is, it's quite the tricky game, but you can figure it out, you know? I don't know. I'm just making it up. I got that from NES Friend. In reality, I have not played this one yet either. Did I fool you? You should watch the NES Friend video on Ghostbusters, though. Classic game. Here's one I've played a lot. Marble Madness. You know, for a game that takes 5 minutes to play through if you're good, you can get so many hours of fun out of Marble Madness. This is one that both me and my fiance like to play quite a bit. I would say that maybe she's a little bit better at it than I am, but I can hold my own to some extent. And yeah, just a very pick up and play, arcadey, fun kind of game. We've got... let's do another one I haven't played through yet. Crystallis. So this is one that I picked up not too long ago with the intention to play. I've heard so many good things about this game. It's often seems to be heralded as one of the better games on this system, but this is one of the relatively small handful of NES games that I have not at least played some of. And this is not like it looks sealed in this case, but in reality it's just slipped open at the top. It is not a sealed copy. Also, you notice that I have like protective cases on some, but not others. I'm too lazy to like buy and put every cardboard game into a plastic sleeve. So if I buy games off eBay or from stores or conventions and it happens to have a protector, I'll usually slot that onto one of the more valuable games, but I don't have protectors for all of them. Baseball, relatively common game here, black box. I got this with a bunch of other games from a friend of mine, and that will come up here in a little bit. This is a childhood favorite of mine. I played this all the time. Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road. Very fun top-down racer. You know, one of those like single screen, you can see the entire track and you're just trying to navigate around it. Really good game, controls super well. I never got the chance to play the 4-player simultaneous action, but we played this all the time. Me and my sister would trade off, you know, try to beat each other's times and stuff like that. It's really fun. It's simple, but it's really, really good. All right, we had an intermission there. I had to grab a cup of coffee because I got a tickle in my throat, and that ain't YouTube friendly. All right. Next up here, we have Maniac Mansion. So this is one of the games that I mentioned that I got in a big lot from my friend. So in high school, a friend of mine, I used to, every day after high school, usually walk over to their house, and we'd spend an hour or two playing various games, usually like Xbox games. At the time, it was like Tetris or like Star Wars, Clone Wars, or stuff like that. But she had a bunch of NES games that she ended up just donating to me, and Maniac Mansion was one of them. And so, you know, I hang on to this particular copy because I have memories of that friend and her giving me those games. And even though this isn't kind of the most ideal version of this game to play, it doesn't have an incredible reputation, and this isn't the one that I would personally play myself, I do like having it because it is, you know, it is representative of the my time in high school, basically. Nostalgic for reasons other than the game itself. we've got Dragon Spirit. This is another scrolling shoot 'em up. This is a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up where you play as a dragon. It's kind of got like an interesting fantasy theme. I've often considered actually getting rid of this one because I also have the TurboGrafx version of this game. And they're similar, but they aren't exactly the same. So for now, I've hung on to it. You know, the NES doesn't have that many scrolling shooters as it is. And so I kind of want to hang on to it just for that reason. Plus, I mean, look at that guy. That guy's, he's too cool. Weird game. Usually very common in lots and stuff. We have Legacy of the Wizard. Another very interesting, even more obtuse 2D platformer with big scrawling maze-like levels. It's like Kiwi Craze to the nth degree. I've definitely never gotten very far in this game. I have no idea what to do. You can play as like different members of this family, and there's huge maps to explore. I've heard from people that if you sort of like really hunker down, focus, you know, take notes, pay attention, that you can have a lot of fun with this one, and it actually is pretty good. But in my experience, I just get lost. So I will need to return to that one at some point with clearer eyes. Kirby's Adventure, favorite of many. This was the first Kirby game I ever played. I love this game. We didn't own it till pretty well after the NES's life cycle had ended. Like, we didn't own it during the NES. I think it was more Super Nintendo era when we bought this. But, you know, it's simple, fun, cute. Is the type of game that I was into and my sister was into, and even my mom got into it with us. So I've always also really loved this cover art. The way that Kirby's like sucking up the background, and then there's those stars and what really looked like soot sprites from a Studio Ghibli movie. Very fun. Very fun game. Another one I haven't played here yet. Got 3D World Runner. There's something about this game that is just intriguing to me. I love this sort of like Space Harrier style behind the back. Weird, just like 90s geometry happening at you. I do need to, at some point, dig into this one and give it a fair shake. Here's one I have played. Interesting game. Maybe the biggest disparity between incredible cover art and less incredible game. This is King's Knight. This is it's basically a scrolling shooter. It's a little different from that, but it's published by Square. And you control this set of characters that you scroll upwards on these stages, and it plays kind of like a ground-based scrolling shooter, but you also need to find hidden areas that'll let you progress onto future stages. It's very difficult. It's very punishing. I actually do like the game. I think it is a fun game. I just think that this cover art is like 10 out of 10 incredible. Maybe my favorite NES cover art. And then the game itself is very like just okay. It's good. Love the idea of this game. Haven't put a ton of time into it. Pinball Quest. This is a RPG pinball game where you're pinballing your way up to victory. This is so cool because it feels like something that, like, this is a modern game, right? Like, it feels like this would be an indie game, this weird genre mashup of pinball and RPG. But this is something that came out on the original Nintendo. Like, the creativity was wild back then. Plus, I really love the cover, like the colors on this cover here. I do know it doesn't have a reputation of being great, but that's never stopped me before. All right, next up we have Dragon Warrior, and I have like the manual here in the box itself because this game is so freaking packed. If you own a copy of Dragon Warrior, there's like maps and a huge instruction booklet and a bunch of paperwork in there. It's like, how does it all even fit into the box? But, you know, obviously the game that started it all, a classic entry. I think, you know, it is simple, and a lot of people look back on this one without too much love because it's a lot of grinding, but I think that there's a little bit of charm in its simplicity. You know, playing as one character, slowly powering up, grinding a bit. It's not bad. Sure, I'd take the original Final Fantasy over Dragon Warrior 1, but I think the Dragon Warrior 1 is pretty good. And I've only played about half the Dragon Warrior games, and this is the only NES one that I've played through. Well, I guess I played through 4 on the DS, but this is the only Dragon Warrior game that I own. So, Oh, another childhood favorite of mine. One of my top games on the NES. Top 5 for sure. Fexanadu, or Fezanadu, however you want to pronounce it. It's daggers and wing boots, mantras and monsters that await you. This is a side-scrolling action RPG. Incredibly gorgeous world, very interesting environments. It feels different from almost any other game on the system. This really, like, before I knew what an RPG was, or an action RPG, this opened my eyes to, like, a potential type of game that I would really love. I didn't actually get into RPGs until years later, but Fezanadu, it felt special in a way that I couldn't put words on at the time, and these days I now understand is like, this is one of my favorite types of games, and this is a really good example of that. Very good music, and just, yeah, all around very cool. Plus, what a classy box. So, if you're looking for NES recommendations, Fezanadu is like top of my list. Ski or die, you know. If you can't have ski free at home, you get ski or die instead. Of course, that comes with skate or die. I actually didn't play too much of this game either, but it is, you know, if you're looking to skateboard, you could do better. I actually don't like this game too much. Another childhood favorite of mine, Gunsmoke. So this is another vertical scrolling arcade shooter. Very difficult, but I didn't care. I didn't mind just repeating the beginning parts of the game over and over and over when I was younger. Really quite fun, and I do recommend that folks check this one out if you're into, you know, that sort of top-down action shooter gameplay style. This is Capcom doing well. Take a little coffee break. Have a classic up next. The original Legend of Zelda. I didn't own this game growing up. My neighbor had it, and I played it a couple times at his house. In fact, this is his copy that he ultimately ended up giving to me. Let's see if I can open this up and show you. This might be too difficult, but oh no, we'll get it out. This is my neighbor's copy, and you can see it is worse for the wear. It is all like lots of crud and black. The gold paint is wearing off, but I don't care because it's the first one that I played, right? So it's special to me. I played it over his house, and I remember thinking like, wow, this is really cool. But at the same time, I was like, I'm just looking for pick up and play games. Now I'm looking for stuff that I can drop in and out of. And I was like, I see the potential here, but even though it floored me and I really liked what I saw at his house, I didn't truly come to appreciate it or Zelda in general until Ocarina of Time came out. And so after that, after I became a Zelda fan, I went back and I played this one, and obviously it's foundational. It is important. But for a long time, I actually thought to myself, you know what? In hindsight, I don't know if I like the original Zelda very much. I always said that it was the very bottom of my Zelda rankings. But in recent years, especially after watching some speedruns of this game, I've really started to appreciate some of the intricacies in ways that I hadn't in the past. And I feel like maybe I was a little dismissive to Zelda. And so I've turned around on this one, and I've gone from it's pretty good to okay, it is worthy of the praise that it gets. I generally do kind of feel like the NES is worse than the Super Nintendo. I've been critical of the NES in the past because I've been well, the NES is just everything that was on the NES was better on the Super Nintendo. But in some cases, like Zelda, I have come back around on that opinion. For example, here's one that I have not come back around on that opinion on. We have the original Metroid. This is the yellow cart variant. This is the one that I had growing up. I always loved this big, beautiful Samus cover there. And I think this game is cool and important, but again, I think that everything this game does, Super Metroid does better. I'm aware that Super Metroid wouldn't exist without this game, but when I go back and I want to play a Metroid, I'm not looking to this one. I'm looking to Super Metroid. So we appreciate you, but you are what you are. Here's one I streamed not long ago. Top Secret Episode Golgo 13. Interesting game with a pretty wide variety of play styles and things. A little obtuse, but you can work your way through it. I got to this like weird underwater part where I was like breaking into some sort of base, and I just couldn't quite figure out what to do. So highly recommend though if you're interested in something that is unique on the system. There's not a lot of games out there like Golgo 13. We've got a couple of classics here. Got Punch-Out! This is a very obscure game. No, I'm just kidding. This is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! This is the game that I probably played the most growing up, next to, well, one that we'll get to in here in a little bit. But again, like I said, I liked pick up and play games, and Punch-Out! Was the absolute perfect example of that. I had the Mike Tyson's version growing up, so Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Is the one that I'm familiar with. And in general, I just think that it's like a nearly perfect game. I like games that have a very specific goal and achieve it with like no margin of error or anything like that. I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like it's hard to improve on Punch-Out! Every entry of Punch-Out, you know, Super Punch-Out, Punch-Out for Wii, etc., all of those are 99% the DNA of this game with a little extra flair. So, massive shout outs to them. That's a case where I think the NES knocked it out of the park. We've got Excite Bike. This is another game that I played a ton growing up. I used to play it with my friends all the time over at their house. Simple, but just the feeling of hitting a ramp and then angling that bike down to hit the down ramp, that literally never gets old. Plus that sound of the bikes, that is the NES to me. Fully representative of what the system is. I actually played through this one for the first time this last year. This is Xexes. Really cool game. It's a mixture of a side-scroller and a scrolling shoot-'em-up. So stages alternate. You do like ground-based platformer exploration type stuff, a little bit of like gated exploration, and then you do scrolling shoot-'em-ups in between. Really good. Quite fun. I would definitely recommend this one too as like a top 10 NES to check out. Very affordable and very cool. All right, another classic. They just keep coming. You can't say that the NES doesn't have classics, right? We've got Ninja Gaiden, the original Ninja Gaiden. Very fun game. This is one that I no experience with this one growing up at all. I hadn't played it truly until a few years ago, but I was really proud of myself because I streamed it and I was able to get through it in a couple of streams on Twitch, which I know like people speedrun this game all the time. It's definitely no like major accomplishment to have beaten Ninja Gaiden, but I still really like the feeling of putting in the time, learning a game, and seeing yourself ultimately become victorious because you were patient and diligent in like trying to understand the game systems. You know, no save states or anything like that, like beating it on its own terms. So really quite a fun game. Very good. Another really good example of what the NES is capable of. And another game that I would say they did get right on the first shot in the NES. Q*bert? What's to say about Q*bert? It's a good puzzler. Nah, it's a good arcade game. Ooh, man. The hits keep coming. Another of my favorite NES games coming up here. This is one that I had growing up. This is one of them that I played the most growing up. We have Little Nemo the Dream Master. Incredibly fun side scroller where you play as this kid who's interacting and interfacing with all these different animals and throwing candy. Just very inventive, unique, colorful, and like whimsical, right? Like this is just like the perfect example of a fun 2D platformer. I know that there's like a whole... I never saw Little Nemo. I don't know any of the other supporting materials for Little Nemo. My only experience was the game, and that didn't hinder me at all. I still loved my time with it, so... I always recommend Little Nemo to folks that want a good NES platformer. Zelda 2. Obviously, I think maybe a little less loved by some than the first one. Another very cool game. I do respect a lot that in the NES era, every sequel was like, what if it was entirely different? What if we threw out everything that we did in the original, right? And made a completely new game with almost no connective tissue and no similar systems, and called it a sequel. Very different from how things are today. But yeah, fun game, difficult. Certainly one that I don't think I could get through without like consulting a guide here and there, but I have played through it and I do enjoy it. Mickey Mousecapade. This is a difficult and kind of janky 2D platformer, but it's, you know, it's Disney, it's Capcom, it's fun. It's fun enough. We've got a boxed copy of Gradius. Gradius 3 in particular is the one that I played a lot of, but Gradius is also pretty dang fun. So if you're looking for scrolling shooters, you probably have already played Gradius, and for good reason. It is pretty dang awesome. Rad Racer, not a game I actually have too many memories with, but it is fun to pick up and just kind of poke at a little bit, so very enjoyable there. Oh, here's one I remember seeing in like 2014 or something, a speedrun of this on Games Done Quick, and I immediately went on eBay and I bought a copy, and it is Tailspin. So this is an interesting side-scrolling shooter kind of exploration adventure game. You shoot down enemies, you earn money, and then you use that money to buy upgrades for your ship. Not unlike like a Fantasy Zone kind of, but it is pretty dang good. I used to watch this cartoon a lot too, so I actually for years didn't even know that there was a Tailspin game on the NES, and when I found out about it, I was like, yes, let's go. We've got huge barcode on the back, but we've got Silver Surfer. This is a pretty notorious game for its difficulty, and I think a lot of people do not necessarily love it. I have played through this game, although it was years and years and years ago, and I've lost all of my knowledge of the game and all of my ability to play through it, but it certainly lives up to its reputation for difficulty. But God, look at that cover art. Talk about your all-timers. Freaking beautiful, like purple galaxy in the background. I mean, it's just comic book art, right? But man, that is gorgeous. Another one that I have not yet played, but I played the original game, Defender 2. It just seemed like a good game, a good sort of pick up and play game at some point whenever you want to pop in something a little more arcadey on the NES. And I believe it was like $5 or something at Half Price Books. Oof. This is one that I also had... this is one that I got in that lot from my friend in high school. This is definitely one that I keep for the memories, and that is Daydreamin' Davy. This game is Daydreamin' Dookie, okay? It is not ideal. The idea is cool, so you play as, you know, this character who's daydreaming, and so they're sort of inserting themselves into all these different scenarios, you know, like a fantasy scenario, a western scenario. But the actual game just kind of sucks. I don't know, man. I don't like to just straight up dunk on a game like that, but it just kind of sucked. I don't know. It was not one I particularly enjoyed, and it's definitely not one that I would recommend to folks. Tecmo Bowl, you know, a game that I think probably needs no introduction. Many people still claim that it is the best sports game ever made, if not for NBA Jam. And yeah, I actually played this one a fairish amount growing up, so I have some memories associated to it. Castlevania. Now this is my favorite Castlevania game. And that is Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. Well, my favorite Castlevania game on the NES, at least. This is the one that I played the most, and I think actually the one that I played first of all the Castlevania games. But I just love the open world. I love the like more action RPG focus. And even though things were like obtuse, difficult to figure out what to do, I like the mystery of it, right? It was intriguing. There was nothing else that felt like this. Every time that you'd be wandering through the forests or the graveyards, and that screen would come up telling you that it was a horrible night to have a curse. It was so like evocative. There was nothing else like that on the NES that was like such a mood piece. And this is another perfect example of a sequel that turns the original game on its head, but in my opinion, improves on it. So when I want to go to an NES game, I definitely go to Castlevania 2. My first Metal Gear was Metal Gear Solid. I think that's maybe true for a lot of folks, so I didn't play this one until after the fact. And I think if you do it in that order, this is an interesting curiosity. Like, it's certainly intriguing, and it's cool to see, like, the bones of the Metal Gear series, but it is a little difficult to figure out exactly what to do. It is, it's not as handholdy as modern Metal Gear games. Very cool, certainly worthy of its praise, but this one sort of feels like an NES game in all the ways that you associate with an NES game in terms of difficulty and navigatability. Punishing but fun adventure game. We've got King's Quest V. This is one that I believe this is one of those adventure games that you can like permanently lock yourself out of succeeding in. But I do love a good, point and click adventure. This is the only King's Quest game I've ever played, and I enjoyed my time with it. I think it is definitely fun. Maybe not the best way to play it, but a good game. One I have not really played yet, but have been intrigued by for a long time. We have Legendary Wings. That's another one I intend to stream soon. The final Castlevania, Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. Sort of the showcase Castlevania game on the system. It is like demonstrating peak NES performance. Choosing between the multiple characters was very intriguing. And all around, it's like this feels like the actual sequel to the first Castlevania, and then Simon's Quest is just something else entirely. But it's so iconic. It's just fun. It's just good. All these Castlevania games are just good. When they hit you with a 2-for-1, Mario 2 and Mario 3, you don't need me to explain to you what these are. I will say that of the two of these, I played more Mario 2. This is the game that I spent so much time with. Beat it multiple times. I used to know where like every secret was, all the right spots to drop the potions and things like that. I was really into Mario 2, and my sister was really into Mario 3. I played through this game multiple times, but I usually ended up watching her play it. So when I think of NES, I think of Mario 2, and then I think of watching Mario 3. But, both of these, just incredible. Just incredible. You don't need to hear it from me. This is the original Final Fantasy. Oh, another great cover art, right? The like world in a sphere. But yeah, Final Fantasy. This is where it starts, right? And it is clunky in all the ways you'd expect an early RPG to be, but also innovative in ways that were really surprising at the time, or at least felt surprising to folks here in North America. But I actually do quite enjoy the original Final Fantasy. I think it is that there's charm in its simplicity. I think if I was going to play it again these days, I would play the Pixel Remaster or one of the modern versions that just streamlines and adds some quality of life stuff. But even without that, this game is surprisingly playable, I think. I really do. Spider-Man Return of the Sinister Six. Another game where you're, defeating all these Sinister Six in these different environments. And one that I have, I'd say kind of like neutral opinions on. It did not shake me to my core, but it's fine. Super C, I've barely played this game. Honestly, it's so interesting to me that, well, we might as well just grab it here now. That Contra gets so much love and attention, and then Super C is like never mentioned. So this one I've only played a handful of times. I do probably want to go back and like give it a fair shake and see if I can make my way through it. Contra, though, this is easily one of my most played games. It's up there with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and stuff as like my chef's kiss. This is what the NES means to me. Just iconic from top to bottom. The perfect difficulty where it feels impossible, but with practice you can do it. And I assure you, you can do it. I was able to do it as a 9-year-old, right? I was able to get through this game. So if I can, you can. And I didn't use the Konami code even at the time. I used it all the time growing up. But I was able to get through without using the Konami code, which means that anyone out there can get through it. But Super fun. Still, when I think of NES, this is probably the first game that comes to my mind. It has its legendary status for a reason, and it is just really freaking good. Willow. This is a action RPG. Pretty fun, actually. I played through this one not too long ago on stream. A good mix of environments, you know, some fun dungeons to explore and things like that. A good, relatively well-paced leveling system, I would say. All in all, for someone who has not experienced the source material, I've never seen Willow. It still held up and was still a very fun action RPG, so totally worth your time. Game that my fiance absolutely dominates me in, Dr. Mario. She's so good at this game, it's inhuman. I suck at Dr. Mario. I get absolutely bodied. My favorite part of it is the music, and then my second favorite part of it is watching her absolutely crush me. Next up here, classic multiplayer game right here. This is one that I used to go to my next door neighbor's house. I used to go to my next door neighbor's house all the time, and he and I would play this one. He was the one that actually owned it growing up, and then I got my copy later, so I'd always be playing his copy. But yeah, I have gone on record, I am not a big beat-em-up fan. I don't really like the 2D belt-scroller style of games all that much. I don't dislike them, it's just, it's not my favorite genre, and a lot of like retro enthusiasts really love those games. But I think this one is super good. This is like sort of the exception that proves the rule, I guess. It's a game that I really, really did quite enjoy. I don't have my coupon, though. My personal Pan Pizza coupon. This copy had it redeemed. DuckTales. Another, like, iconic, classic 2D platformer. This one is probably the one that most people are familiar with in the Capcom library. Great music, great environments. Just sort of fun top to bottom. Not one I had growing up, but one that still holds up even today incredibly well. Here's one I did have growing up. Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle. I don't know why I had this game. Wasn't like a huge Bugs Bunny fan or anything, but I used to play this game all the time. There are so many freaking Crazy Castle games, and they come out in a whole bunch of different systems, and they get all sorts of different IPs associated to them. I mean, it's fine. It's good, like, pick up and play, arcadey, video gamey kind of fun, but it's not, these days, like a core shaker. But I loved it as a kid. One that I loved as an adult, because I didn't play it until either this year or late last year, Guardian Legend. Holy crap, what a good game. Everything about this game. Visually, incredible. Soundtrack, incredible. And then gameplay-wise, it's like this incredible mix of exploration, sort of like top-down, and scrolling shoot-'em-up levels. It's just, it's awesome. It is mind-blowing to me that this is not like a franchise that has continued on into the future, because it is incredibly deserving of more love, and a high recommendation from me. We've got Section Z. It's a pretty difficult game. It's like a jetpack style scrolling shooter. I haven't been able to get very far into it, but what I have played has been intriguing. One that I need to definitely dedicate more time to. Star Tropics. This is the, action RPG with the letter inside that you dip into water and things like that. But it's interesting. It's very linear for an RPG. You're really kind of set on one track. Now, all RPGs are linear, but they usually have the illusion that they're not very linear. This one doesn't really, I feel like. It is good, but you are going to, I think, sometimes need to look up what to do next. So, very fun game. Very unique, like, setting coupled with genre, but not always the easiest to get through. This was one I did do on stream, and it was brutal. Shadowgate. Man, this game gets hard, but very cool point-and-click adventure game. Very difficult to figure everything out on your own. It took a lot of trial and error. I didn't want to really look stuff up too much on this one, but I got through almost all of it pretty much hint-free. If anyone's going to play this game, definitely I recommend, there's a site called, I think it's the Universal Hint System, which is like a hint website for games, and it gives you clues on a whole bunch of different games that you can reveal in like increasing order of direct. So you can get very vague hints and then kind of click down into eventually them just giving you the answer, which is like the perfect way to bridge the gap between I don't want to look at a guide and just having to look up the answer. It was helpful in a couple of spots to just nudge me. RC Pro-Am. This is, fun racer. I don't have too much to say on it. Punch-Out featuring Mr. Dream. This is not the Punch-Out game I had growing up, but I did have the cart. I think I got this cart from my friend in that same group of games. And so it is fun to have both versions of that game. One I know absolutely nothing about, Pinbot. I think I got this at the same time I got Defender 2. And one that I've been meaning to check out for a while. I just like pinball games. And I like stuff where it's like pinball plus something. But Pinbot is one that I think is more just sort of straight pinball. However, I'm always down to try a pinball game. And so that one is one that we'll give the old college try. Ninja Gaiden 2. Not as hard and maybe not quite as fun as the first, but it's basically just as good as the first. If you like the original Ninja Gaiden, the 2 sequels are kind of more of the same, which is perfect for you. So this one took me less time to get through. I also did this one on stream, and it wasn't quite as memorable, but it's still super fun. Super fun. Just a handful of games left. Got one that I have not played through yet, Wizards and Warriors. It seems fun. I know that it's got a bit of a mixed reputation, but it seems like the type of game that I could get into is like this sort of side-scrolling action game, but don't know too much about it other than that it has great cover art. Tiny Toon Adventures. I was more of a Buster's Hidden Treasure guy on the Sega Genesis, but I kind of always tend to like a Tiny Toons game. Even the simple ones like, what is it, Bab's Big Break on Game Boy. It's not like amazing, but it's fun. And so when I saw this one, I was like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to try out a Tiny Toons platformer. I can't say no to that. I watched a lot of Tiny Toons growing up as a kid. You know, I didn't. My dad watched Looney Tunes, and then I watched Tiny Toons. We were the perfect Toons family. Another game that my fiance crushes me in, Paperboy. I suck at this game, but I used to play it over at my uncle's house. And I would mostly, when I played it as a kid, I would just like ignore all the Paperboy stuff, and I would just want to get to the stunt course at the end. These days, I try to actually do the paperboying, and I do it very poorly. But it is classic, very fun, and another really good pick-up-and-play game. It's sort of like a must-have in an NES library. Speaking of Tetris, you know, the prequel to Tetris Effect, the greatest version of Tetris. No. I mean, yes, but to give the original Tetris its due, this is something that I think is pretty much impossible to own an NES and not have Tetris, right? So I suck at Tetris. I don't suck at Tetris. I'm the most medium at Tetris, which makes you look like you suck at Tetris because you're either like so good that it's impressive or you're one of the Tetris nobodies. You're a pleb. And I am a Tetris nobody. And then my last boxed game, this is actually a modern release. Got Kira Kira Star Night DX. This is a like a musical album rhythm game that came out through Limited Run back in 2021, I think. I have not popped this one open yet to play it, but I do want to play it because I've heard the music in the game and it's quite good. And then my last game, no box, because this game never came with a box. Mario Bros. Duck Hunt. Just the game in the manual. It doesn't have a box because the box is the system, right? It was a pack-in, and if you want to have the box, for this particular version, for the combo cart, you have to have a complete in-box system, which I don't. So, it's Mario Bros. It's a video game. You can play it. So that's it. That is the entire complete in-box NES collection. There's still tons of stuff on NES that I still want. Unfortunately, it is pretty slow goings in terms of new acquisitions for complete NES stuff. But either way, if you stuck all the way to the end of this and watched through every single one of those games, thank you. Let me know if you want to hear any like in-depth thoughts on any of these. Some of these I had to like really shoot past because even talking about all of them for like 30 seconds, this is still like a 40-minute video. So, and because my voice constantly wants to go out / make me cough. But Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. If you liked what you saw, stick around. Feel free to subscribe. There's more collection videos like this, pickup videos, stuff like that coming in the near future. Thank you all. You're the best. Bye-bye.